Hey, good morning, everybody. Today I'm just gonna post sort of the final lecture video for chapter 26. Again, this chapter sort of details um, the beginnings of World War II. The last chapter of the class that we're gonna go over, chapter 27. That's going to deal entirely with like the events of World War II. Now, World War II is similar to World War I in the fact that the war was actually broken out for a little while before we got involved. Now, the difference between World War I and World War II is World War I, we waited a long time. Like World War I was being fought for years before we got into the fight. World War II is only being fought for roughly about a year between the beginnings of World War II and then when we got involved, maybe a year and a half or so. I'm going to go through, just like with past videos, I'm going to run through the notes, try to explain key details, and then you're going to have a quiz after this. So make sure that you use the notes, use the video to do well on the quiz. I start off with this cartoon here. I always like to begin this section whenever I'm in class. There's so much history in this cartoon here. Most people can identify that this is Adolf Hitler here in a very much sort of a making fun of everybody salute. I always like I like the phrase thumbing your nose at people to show your disrespect for someone or show that you think that they're a bit of a joke. And then down here it says, I don't know if you can see it real well, spineless leaders of democracy. This is countries like England and France and America that showed that they were spineless, meaning they didn't have a backbone. They were scared of Hitler. The one real lesson from World War II is that Adolf Hitler in his early years was a joke. He was a tiny little man who spoke a big game, but Germany was weak. And everybody was still beaten up from World War I, and nobody really wanted to fight a war. Nobody wanted to get into a fight. And most historians do acknowledge that if the United States, when Adolf Hitler started his misbehaviors, would have stood up to him early and smacked him down, World War II probably never happens the way it does. So I really like this cartoon because this does go to show that in the early days of the war, Adolf Hitler did pretty much everything he wanted and nobody got in his way. And that's going to be something I'm going to talk about in this section. So, anyway, a little bit about America and Russia's relationship. America and Russia, we've never really been friends. After World War I, we have a really strained relationship, but we do work hard to try to fix that relationship with Russia. Not because we liked Russia, but because we saw the dangers in Germany and we wanted to try to work through that so that we could maybe be more friendly with Russia because we thought maybe they might end up being somebody that we were going to have to fight with, not against. In 1936, the first real alliance in World War II is created. Germany, Italy, and Japan are going to form together to create what they call the Axis Power Alliance. That's a great test question. You're going to need to know that. The three big countries, Germany, Italy, and Japan. There were other countries as well, but they're the three big ones. And even in that alliance, it's primarily Germany and Japan. Italy's like the third wheel in that. In 1938, there is a famous conference that is held. It's called the Munich Conference. It's held in a German city. The city is Munich. Here, the countries of Germany, Italy, England, and France gathered to talk about the aggressiveness of Adolf Hitler in Germany, because at this point they had invaded and conquered some of Czechoslovakia. They had invaded and conquered some of the Rhineland, some of the Sudetenland. Not a lot of territory, but they had conquered some land, and Hitler's building up his military. He's being a bit of a jerk, and the rest of the world does notice. And there becomes this sort of talk of, well, how do we deal with Hitler being a jerk? I always like to compare Adolf Hitler in these early days to a bully. Not that I want to sit here and say that sometimes you should get into a fight, but sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to treat the bully the way he does other people. Oftentimes, bullies behave the way they do because nobody stands up to them. This was England and France's chance to stand up to the bully, to stand up to Adolf Hitler. What they decided to do is they adopted this policy of what they called appeasement. They promised to give Hitler certain land. Because Hitler was saying all along, I want more land, I want more land, I want Germany to be bigger, I want it to be powerful. And England and France pretty much thought, look, if we were to give him what he wants, give him some land, he'll stop being a bully. He's going to stop being a jerk. He won't invade France. He won't invade Russia. He won't invade England. If we give him what he wants, he'll behave. And anybody that's ever dealt with a bully knows the moment you give a bully what he wants, he's coming back for more. This was a huge failure. The future Prime Minister of England, his name is Winston Churchill, he is going to claim after this that Hitler is going to take over all of Europe, that Hitler is a dangerous, dangerous man. And he sees Hitler for what he is. So this is not really the most popular move at the time. As far as America is concerned, we're watching all of this and we're staying out of it. From 1935 to 1939, we actually passed a series of laws called the Neutrality Acts, or the Neutrality Laws, where we specifically ban gun sales, travel, or assistance to any countries that are at war. Anybody. So we will not sell guns to Germany, France, Italy, England, nobody. If they're at war, we're not helping them because we didn't want to get involved one way or the other. We might be watching and might be saying that Hitler dude, he's something screwed up, but we're not going to get in his way because it's not our fight. As far as how the war actually gets started, we start to change our opinions of Hitler. Like, we start realizing he's a little bit more of a dangerous kind of guy as we start seeing that he's threatening to invade more and more countries. He starts threatening to invade the countries of Albania, and the big one is Poland. In 1939, Hitler signs a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. This doesn't mean that they became friends and allies. What this meant was, you've got the Soviet Union over here, the Soviet Union and Germany, they just agreed that they weren't going to fight with each other. They're not going to be friends, but they promised not to be enemies. I'm going to talk about this when we get to the next chapter. Adolf Hitler is not somebody that you're ever supposed to trust. So the Soviet Union signs this non-aggression pact thinking Germany's not going to invade them and isn't going to attack them. They are full of it. They're going to get stabbed in the back by Hitler so bad on this one. At this point, England and France, they draw a line in the sand. They are tired of Adolf Hitler being a bully. They're tired of him walking around threatening to invade countries, actually invading some countries. They draw a line in the sand and they say, it is now time to stand up to the bully. And they draw that line around Poland. Country of Poland right here. Poland is this country that is between Russia, the Soviet Union, and between Germany. It's the country between them. By September of 1939, Adolf Hitler sort of laughs and says, I don't think you're going to stop me because you haven't stopped me yet. And England and France, they say they will declare war against Germany if he invades Poland. September of 1939, Hitler decides to test that. And he actually does invade Poland. And actually, not just Poland, but Russia invades Poland as well. If you study this map here, the Soviet Union invades this half of Poland. Germany invades this half of Poland. They agreed to basically split it into two. At that point, the war is declared by the Allied powers of England and France. The USSR, as I said, they're eventually going to become an Allied power, but they're busy taking land themselves as well, so they're not really the best of guys themselves. Continuing on with this, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, realizes that we can't stay on the sidelines for long, and he wants to amend or change the neutrality acts and laws that will allow us to sell weapons to the Allies. This is different from like getting involved in the war. We're not sending soldiers over, but he does change this to allow us to help who we felt were the good guys in this, England and France. At this point, Franklin Roosevelt realizes that war is coming, and he determines that the best thing for America is, as he's getting near the end of his second term, is he decides that he is going to run for an unprecedented, never seen before, third term as president of the United States. Today we have term limits. No president can serve more than 2 terms in office, no matter what. At that time, there was no term limit. It just nobody ever tried to run for a third term. Franklin Roosevelt does run for a third term, and he does successfully win. That is a big deal. I'm not going to get into it much here, but that is a huge deal. I've got this stuff about the Lend-Lease Act. We just start loaning out supplies to the Allied powers. And then that leads to the invasion of France. I'm going to sort of stop on this one and then start a second video here in just a bit. The German war strategy was very different from anything seen in World War I. We spent a lot of time talking about the trenches. World War I style fighting was slow, monotonous. It was hard. Nobody could like successfully take a lot of territory. Adolf Hitler used what he called the Blitzkrieg strategy. It's a German word that means lightning war. In America, we've sometimes used the phrase shock and awe. The German war technique or war strategy was such to scare the living bejesus out of people, to bring such ferocity, such anger, such violence, that not only do you defeat the enemy, you scare those around you. And you make other countries say, whoa, these guys are crazy. We are not going to mess with them whatsoever. It's supposed to be fast and decisive. You leave no doubt that you're going to win this war. In May of 1940, Germany invades France. And in just about a month, France falls. That is crazy for an entire country like France. Like one half of the Allied powers crumbles in a month. Germany, if I was in class, I would get into this whole story about this Maginot Line. This Maginot Line was a defensive line that France had built along their border after World War I because they were scared to death that Germany would invade again someday, which they did. It didn't stop Germany. They blew right through that. Like they went around it, and France had nothing that they could do to stop Hitler. And by the end of June of 1940, France had fallen, and England was by themselves. They had no more allies. They were fighting World War II completely alone. At that point, Winston Churchill is elected the new Prime Minister of England, and he's going to become the head of their war efforts. But by August, Hitler orders massive bombings of England at that point. The city of London is the target of constant bombing raids from the Germans and the Nazis. And England is not doing well at this point. So I can only record about 15 minutes of video with this program, so I'm going to stop and then finish up the notes with another short video.